firmly in digitization and the push towards better technology solutions? If I could ask Nicola first, perhaps.
Yes, and that's the point I raised. I mean, it's because you have real life issues today. I mean, BCPs and all the fraud cases. I mean, corporates see the need, and they don't see digital, as Michael said, as a cost anymore. It's part of the solutions to problems they have. So we see corporates coming on board. I mean, spending time and resources to discuss with us to see how our products can help them. So definitely yes.
Thank you, Michel.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, basically, we have seen two problems, right? Recently, is really like a physical, for example, India closing physically on the back of COVID-19, and DHL being unable to send paper around. And then obviously the more indirect issue that our clients are having on the back of possibly a reduced liquidity due to all the fraud cases. So we have definitely see a massive uptake in interest amongst the corporates and the traders. It's also twofold. I think they are much more coming together to solve their own problems. For instance, like platforms like VACT and for energy, and Covantis, which is focused on the agri-bit. It's more, digital solutions that solve their post-trade settlement problems, as well as a much more proactive stance towards us as a bank, and probably also to platforms like Komgo, to think along and to work along in order to solve the problems that we mutually have. And whereas this before was probably quite a few of these companies had like, yeah, well, you bring me a solution, and when it's really adding value and it's done and it's finished, we'll absorb it. I think now that has changed into situations like, okay, guys, let's team up, let's collaborate, what we discussed earlier, and let's tackle this problem together. Yeah.
And Will, is this something which you have seen as well? Amongst the insurers?
No, not from an insurance perspective. I think I would say I'm probably surprised that we haven't seen more of it, given its obvious benefits. And I think this we've talked about this already during the panel discussions, but I think this is where we really do need to try and sort of accelerate the rate of change by getting all of the stakeholders involved in this, and really to look at the credit insurers here, because if we are able to move the dial a bit and get the credit insurers on board with systems and platforms such as Track, then one would like to think that they will be sort of proactive in advocating that change within their client base. Because again, it's an enhancement on the credit risk management, which the insurers should be pushing for. I think the $1 million question, I think, from a credit insurance perspective, is how we get everyone to invest in that idea of promoting that change, which is something we haven't yet been able to answer.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is probably something which is quite topical, quite interesting. It's the legal value and content of a digital receipt surely supersedes the clarity and security over old-fashioned emails or holding certificates. I guess, Leon, probably if we expand it out a bit more to include some of the documents of title and sort of the things that we have discussed. We've discussed today the importance of or how certain documents are protected by law, but actually they may be antiquated and actually quite easy to create or to fraudulently generate. I mean, do you see an increase or a change in the value of digital receipts as time goes on?
Oh, look, it's a really good question, and I agree with your introductory comments here. And I think that, as we've all discussed today, there are opportunities for unscrupulous parties at every level, let's say. But obviously, with a digital receipt, we can reduce a portion of that risk. I think it then becomes a trade-off or a balance, at least, between the more traditional, accepted and understood documentation. The question about what's a better document or approach, I think very much depends upon the context. If we're looking at something like, let's say, a precious metal consignment deal in a secure vault, then there's obviously less scope for problems and risk with the documents there. But if you're talking about, I don't know, a parcel of grain on a cargo, a parcel of grain on a ship from South America, then obviously there's a big difference, and the operational risks and possibility of problems there is much greater. I think also when looking, as you suggested, at holding certs or warehouse receipts, the digital receipt will obviously go a considerable way to reducing the problems and risks there. But I think, as mentioned, it does lack some legal certainty, at least at an international level. And as discussed, and I think the panel very clearly explained, with wider engagement of participants and maybe governments, if that's necessary, through the adoption of legislation, be that the MLETR or that's the UNCITRAL model law and electronic transferable records, or otherwise. I think that's really something which would be needed. But there's always still going to be the necessity of reliable and well-operated warehousing networks, for example. So I don't think you can get away from that operational risk, no matter what the solution is. So I think, look, in summary, I think it's a balancing act for any particular trade as to which risk you want to take. And so I think, yes, the digital receipt goes quite some way to mitigating a particular aspect, but I think more would be required insofar as that collaboration that's been discussed is concerned before we can have complete comfort in it.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one last question, and I think probably the most apt one is, what are the digitalization tools which has encountered success in the last 12 months? And perhaps if I could pose this to Michel and to Nicola as the final one.
Well, I would say that the first success that we have witnessed, which is really the result, I would say, of digitalization, is that the industry has finally come together and is trying to work together and to collaborate to solve the problem. That is, and I think that is the most important success for the foreseeable future, which is a massive change in the way we were operating. Now, then, meanwhile, I do think that komgo, for example, has made great strides, and I would say 2020, 2021 is really about finally scaling and getting implemented. Admittedly, we are really early on. It's not like there is a silver bullet. It's very unclear which platform will win, or I'm also not a firm believer of one winner, but we are still early on in early phases. But we are now past the early development and piloting phase, and are now ready to start reaping the benefits from the really first production ready platform solutions that are out there. So for me, it's really A, that the sector has come together, and B, there are certainly platforms out there like komgo that are now ready to really start scaling. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicola.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you have again, it depends on what is the issue you try to tackle, and in the case of fraud and tool track, there is no magic solution at the end of the day. So it's all part of a combination of best practices and also change management. But we have seen even local initiatives to tackle the issue, and I think that's the right answer. I don't think there will be one single platform winning it all. I think it's a combination of several, and that's needed to ensure that the liquidity of our industry is still there. So what is really key, I think, on our side, is openness of solutions. When it comes to the ecosystem, and you need to find a solution together, you need to be open. You need to have a bottom-top approach. You need to come from the industry, what people need. How do you do that? Or do you transform your solution into reality instead of imposing it? And that's how you will gain the industry support and basically make a tool successful for the benefit of all.
Thank you.